For the small cell deployment in Napa, I have 5 cards at this point. Dan Lynch, Lynn Marie DeVincent, Marla Toffel, and Carrie Murphy.
I have 6 packets for the council. Hi, my name's Dan Lynch. I live at 418 Franklin Street, which is in the Napa Abajo Fuller Park Historic District. 14 of the 16 houses on my block, including mine, are listed in the National Register of Historic Places as contributing to the historic character of this district. I'm here tonight to voice my concerns regarding Verizon's planned installation of new small cell sites in Napa. One of the planned sites, which they call Napa 057, is on a PG&E pole 30 feet from the front of my house. Recently, I discovered that there was an encroachment permit for my address under review to add Verizon equipment to a replacement utility pole. I went down and spoke to Public Works to figure out what was going on, and they told me Verizon was installing small cell sites throughout the city. When I asked how to register an objection to this project, I was told that the city does not have any control over what gets put up on the utility poles. They did say that the permits had not been issued yet. When I asked who I should talk to register an objection, the city referred me to CBR Group, the contractor working for Verizon. They're replacing the pole because the existing pole, while perfectly fine, is not tall enough for their antenna. The antenna will go on top of the new pole, and a collection of ugly, highly visible RF support equipment will hang off the pole from 7 to 15 feet above grade. For the last several weeks, I've been on a deep dive into small cell technology, FCC regulations, potential health effects of long-term RF radiation exposure, insurance liability, and regulations that other cities have put into place, and now a bit of community activism. I've learned that we're not doing enough to regulate these installations. The FCC regulations, Section 704A7A, clearly give local governments authority over decisions regarding placement of these decisions, or placement of these systems. Other cities have put regulations in place. We have not. My ask of the City Council tonight is simple. The City of Napa should not issue permits to CBR Group, nor the 2 other groups who have subsequently come in and asked for permits for other telecommunications companies, until the city approves regulations that appropriately govern this work. The current process is not sufficient. Here's one example for you. 2 sites, Napa 057 and Napa 042, are in the Napa Abajo neighborhood, and both are adjacent to and across the street from properties listed in the National Register. Napa Municipal Code, Chapter 1552, Historic Preservation, is in place to ensure we preserve and honor our historic buildings and neighborhoods. I'm certain that the installation of these sites does not contribute to the historic character of this neighborhood. I'm also certain that the way the city is handling these permits today did not even consider the city's obligations under Chapter 1552. This is wrong and should be corrected.
Thank you, Dan. Lynn?
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Lynn Marie DeVincent, 409 Franklin. I am also part of the neighborhood association My Street, My Choice, Napa, and I'm also here to address the Verizon so-called small cell deployment project for the city of Napa. In my opinion, this project needs to be put on pause until there is a special council study session or a town hall meeting. Verizon supposedly provided a community outreach meeting on March 29th, but it was actually a promotional forum by the CBR Group. If you read the Napa Register article the next day, you'll know that very few people attended. Out of the 80,000 population of the city who will be affected by these hazardous new microwave radiating towers, a small number were mailed notices, the ones whose homes were within 150 feet of one of these installations, like Dan. It says in the letter, these professionals will be prepared to discuss construction, pole selection, health and safety, and the zoning approval process. But when we got there, we were told this is a done deal. What was the zoning approval process? Napa's city officials improperly categorized this Verizon project as exempt facilities. A project of this magnitude, 65 new microwave cell transceivers with accompanying battery boxes in residential neighborhoods all over Napa. You can't even put a sign on your sidewalk without a neighbor review. The citizens of Napa have the right to be advised of decisions affecting their health and safety according to our California Constitution and also according to Napa's municipal codes. My Street, My Choice Napa Association is asking that you put this project on immediate pause. The Santa Rosa City Council has done this for their very similar Verizon project. We respectfully request a town hall meeting or a special council study session that will allow the community to be heard. We do not want another Verizon CBR publicity meeting. Please direct your Public Works Department to advise Napa citizens that there will be a special council study session on the agenda as soon as possible. You were elected to protect the rights and safety of your neighbors. We're counting on you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have some packets for each of you.
If you give them to the clerk, she'll give them to us. Not that scary, huh? Marla.
Good evening, Council. My name is Marla Toffel. I live at 444 Montgomery Street in Napa. I am just west of Fuller Park. My neighborhood is also historic. I think I'm a level 3 historic home. I am part of the My Street, My Choice group, and I am urging Council to hold either a study session or a public meeting with Napa residents about our serious concerns on the close proximity microwave radiation antennas. Specifically, on an issue like this where there is one widespread significant change in the public right-of-way, this is space that's owned by the public. It should come before the public in cooperation with local government in a transparent way and with ample time to discuss and debate this issue. The publicity has been minimal. Why? And the publicity has been directed by Verizon, which stands to profit from the change. Why? City staff, some are ill-informed about the law and the code, and they are giving misinformation to residents calling with questions and concerns. Why? Number two, there are precedents with other communities similar to ours that have now prohibited these microwave radiation antennas due to the negative impacts. This alone should compel and impel our city to slow the process and make it public. The negative impacts to our property values, to our health, and there exists a better alternative at this time, fiber optic, which was mentioned earlier. Why not use fiber optic, the same standards that the city is requiring for new construction, which is going with underground fiber optics? Why not negotiate with these companies or start a public internet program in our community? My last point is transparency. Is corporate profit motive driving this quick and largely unpublicized change? Is profit motive driving this council and the city staff, because our city's budget gets fees from these contracts? Is there a conflict of interest within the city government to make this decision without full and an open public hearing? I'd like an opportunity for me and my neighbors to have this discussion about the best use of our resources and to protect our health in the best way going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone's glasses?
And I just want to mention, this was on our agenda in December. It was a public meeting. It was agendized. Understand people get connected to a project sometimes down the line. But there was a public meeting that discussed this project. And as you heard me discuss earlier, that we are directing staff to not go forward with any encroachment permits until it's come back on our agenda with the process and the elements that should be addressed in the permit issuance. So, next comment. Next.
Carrie Murphy.
Hi, my name is Carrie Murphy, and I live on Sierra Avenue. In December, I read that the Napa City Council agreed to let Verizon Wireless put their equipment on city-owned poles. But what was less clear at that time was a related plan to give Verizon encroachment permits that would allow them to install their equipment on PG&E and other utility poles in people's front yards. Verizon wants to use wooden utility poles because it's the cheapest way to build their 5G network. They are notorious for submitting deceptive renderings to city planners. Verizon's renderings for a site in Santa Rosa looked nothing like the equipment they installed recently. I'll give you copies of the photos, but they're really quite horrendous. Phone connectivity problems during the fires last fall has people concerned. There's no doubt we need wireless coverage that supports phone calls. But 5G isn't primarily about call access. It's largely about improving Verizon's video speed. We should not conclude that we are at the mercy of Verizon. We should not allow any cell carrier to exploit our front yards to boost their profits. There are equipment and site alternatives that won't destroy our property values and risk our health and safety. There are less intrusive means that won't violate our town standards. Doable alternatives include putting equipment underground. There are two important state and federal court cases that affirm that cities and counties can exercise some reasonable discretion over design and placement. And a California appeals court upheld the right for cities and counties to exercise reasonable discretion when regarding aesthetics, specific site placement of wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. Other cities have clear ordinances that govern wireless equipment and facilities. Napa needs an ordinance. A San Francisco city planner who has experience successfully pushing back against carrier tactics has said, quote, "To be clear, wireless carriers can come up with well-designed and well-situated small cells, but it requires a concerted effort by the city and county to move in that direction." Napa's City Council and Planning Office needs to make a concerted effort to manage the small cells. We need an ordinance, an immediate hold on any permits, and a public meeting to discuss small cell site risks, benefits, and alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Paul McGavin, and I'm an expert in measuring and mitigating microwave radiation. And I can tell you for certain, these cell phone towers that are proposed for the residential zones in Napa County are completely unnecessary. We will show substantial evidence in the record that there is no significant gap in Verizon coverage. They must show that and prove that in order to be able to install a single one of these antennas. In addition, they need to provide the least intrusive means in order to actually close any alleged significant gap in coverage, of which there is none. So what do we have here so far? Well, we did about an afternoon of research to figure out that, well, we have addresses for 60 of these things, but we go to the city planning department and to the public works department. Tell us more about these. How do they actually categorize? How many on city property? How many on PG&E poles? Oh, we don't know. Gee, I guess you got to call CBR. Okay. How many are in residential zones and how many are commercial zones? We don't know. We better call CBR. Cool. Let's call CBR. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, can you tell us how many of these things are actually in residential zones? Who are you? Where did you get this phone number? Oh, we got this off of the files in the public record. You know, those records that should be available to the public, those that are not yet on your website, they're hiding behind a counter. Then when I'm there and I say I'd like to take pictures, your public works department says I can't take a picture of it. This is public information. You cannot hide this from the public. They need this in order to defend their property values. Put one of these up. What's going to happen to the 4 people who live near that tower? Boom! $200,000 off the value of their house. Instantly. Right there. That's $35 to $40 million of property value you're going to suck away from your residents for what? To help Verizon with their business interests? So what do we see from December 2017? Well, we've got 12 pages of municipal code that was last updated in 2003, and we got 17 pages of Verizon's cookie cutter licensing agreement that they got some people in Napa to sign. I am telling you, everyone, this is a terrible deal. And you have every reason to cancel this deal for fraud in the inducement. Verizon never told you that what they are doing is they are trying to transfer their liability. They have it. They talk about it to their investors. They have absolutely no insurance to cover injuries from radio frequency microwave radiation. The minute they mail their private antennas onto your public property, you're now holding the bag. This is analyzed by attorney Harry Lehman. I will give you copies of this entire letter. This is the letter that actually moved the votes in the Senate and the Assembly. This is why SB 649, which your city opposed, was vetoed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to share, we did have some folks here this afternoon with some concerns about Verizon. At that point, the council directed staff that no permits will be issued, no encroachment permits will be issued until the process will be brought back to the council for our review and input. Some of the elements that should be addressed in the permit issuance will include staff evaluation of specific site locations to minimize negative impacts on private property, public outreach process for those sites, aesthetic considerations and site-specific mitigation that might address negative impacts, and impacts to infrastructure, facilities, or equipment in the public right-of-way.